Happy Sunday and peace to everyone. I want to give thanks to the universe for all that it does for us, and also for our ancestors who have suffered in order to pay the way for us, so that we can enjoy the things that we are enjoying today. I just want to recap some of the things that I said before. And this time, I'm going to continue on the barometer and our emotions. And I did mention the ladder before. I'm going to add the ladder this time. Now, a barometer. We all know what a barometer is. A barometer is anything or something which reflects change in circumstances, opinions, or indicate change or measure pressure. And we experience that in our life. Well, let me explain that a little later. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Also, the barometer and our emotions give us the barometer and our emotion gives us all the information that we need in order to become familiar with ourselves. And we all have a barometer inside of us. And our barometer is regulated by our feelings and our emotions. And an example of that is like when we're feeling loving, or we're feeling hate, or we're worried, or we feel resentment, or we're unhappy, or we feel joy. That's where the barometer and our feelings and emotions come in at. Because the barometer measure pressure and change. So if I'm feeling happy this moment, then the next moment I'm feeling sad, then that's a change. And that's where the barometer come in at. And also with that change, it depends on, let me see how I want to put that. It depends on when it comes to the pressure of it. If we're really, really angry, how much energy we give that. That's where the pressure come in at. How much energy we give that emotion or that feeling, be it love or happiness or worried, or the barometer come in when we actually give energy to that. So the barometer inside of us, in our feelings and emotions, always goes together. And if we took time to pay close attention to what's going on inside of us, we will become aware of the barometer that we have inside of us. Because the barometer informs us. The barometer informs us of how long we have been in a feeling or emotion. And that could be like days, weeks, months, years, even decades. Some of us have been in our feelings and emotions a long time. I'll just put it like that. Some of them we can kind of shake them in a few days. Then some of them, it may take a week, some a month, because the energy, the pressure that we feel from them, uh, we hold on to them, or either they burden us down, or we can't see how to be able to let that go. So that's my recap. Now I want to speak to you about the ladder. And I'm going to try to describe this ladder the best that I possibly can. Excuse me. Let's say that this is a ladder that you see painters use that actually has only 2 legs. So that means it has to lay up against a structure. That's what's going to hold this ladder up. So let's say that the 2 poles on the ladder, okay, that leans up against the structure. One of the poles is, one side of the pole is, we're going to call it the barometer, okay? So we went through what a barometer is. It reflects change in our circumstances, our opinions. It indicates change, and it measures pressure. Okay, then the other side of the ladder that lays up against the structure is going to be the scale. And let's say that this scale goes to, well, I don't know if I want to say it goes to, let's say the middle of this ladder, the middle step of this ladder is 0. Let's put it like that. Okay, and try to picture this with me. Okay, so the lower part of the ladder, where we start at to climb the ladder, the lower part of the ladder is from, let's say, 1 to 0. It don't matter it's just 1 to 0. It's from 1 to 50, okay? That's the lower part of the ladder where we have to start at. When we start, we have to start at the bottom. And then let's say the upper part of the ladder is from 1 to 50 also. Okay, in the middle is 0. Okay, so 0 is the crossing point to go to the lower part of the ladder or the higher part of the ladder. Okay, and also this is a vertical ladder. Okay, also this is a vertical ladder. I'll just leave it like that. And so the ladder has steps. Okay, and let's say each one of those steps that we take coming from the bottom going to 0, or either crossing 0 and going above, is an accomplishment. Okay, and that accomplishment is what's the word I'm looking for? Accomplished by climbing the ladder. Okay, now this ladder that I'm describing, it stands on this. We have to balance this ladder ourselves. We are the structure that balance this ladder. So try to imagine that, because it's not a structure for it to lay up against. It's a ladder that stands vertical. Okay, and as we balance this, as we climb and balance this ladder, it's going to be difficult, but we can do it, you know, because it's our ladder and we're at the bottom of it. And so we have to balance this ladder through our feelings and emotion. Okay? Let me see. Okay, through our feelings and emotion. Are we going to balance this ladder with our feelings and emotion? Let me put it like that. We're going to balance the ladder, and it's a vertical ladder, with our feelings and our emotion. Okay? Let me see. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. Okay? Okay. Now I want to talk about our story. Okay? And we all have a story. Our story began when we entered this incarnation, or when we were incarnated. Let me put it like that. Or when we were born. Some people say when we were born, in which both is correct. Okay? So we all have our own story. Okay? And I'm not saying to anyone, get over your story. I'm not saying that your story don't matter. Because we all have a story. But remember that with so many of our stories have us at the bottom of the ladder. Okay? And when we came in this incarnation, when we were incarnated, or when we were born, we came in at the bottom of the ladder. Okay, so we're using this as an example. So we have lived no matter how many days, weeks, months, and those would be like infants, you know, who would be that young right now. But, you know, like for years or either decades, no matter how many decades we may be, okay? Or no matter how many years we may be. We're at our story has us at the bottom of the ladder. Okay, and we all have a story. And our story is our life. It's our life experiences. And everyone's story may be different. And everyone's story is different. No one's story is the same because all of our stories is unique. Our story is our book of life for this incarnation, being incarnated this time, or for being born this time. So our story is our life. And as we continue to live, it depends on how many decades we have lived, our story will continue to increase. And as our story continues to increase, how do I want to put this? As our story continues to increase or get bigger, it becomes heavier. And we tell ourselves, we say, well, I know that there's a purpose for me being here besides this story that I have, that I'm not too happy about, that my mother was a drug addict, or that my father left us, or that my brother or sister went away to the military and got killed, or that I've been raped or molested, or that I was in foster care, or that I'm better than everyone else because I'm a doctor, or I'm a lawyer, or that I'm a school principal. No matter, everyone has a story, and their story is unique to them. And that story they hold on to. That story is what they're living. And that story is what they share. And I'm not saying to get over your story. I'm saying that we live within our story. And I'm saying that our story buries us alive. Now just follow me and, picture this with me. Take this trip with me that our story buries us alive. So we have this ladder when we come in, okay? And we come in at the bottom of the ladder. And a lot of times we sit there in our story because our story becomes so heavy because of the energy we have put into it with our feelings and our emotion, and our story is real. Everyone's story is real. But now we got to decide what to do with our story. And we can continue to live in our story and be buried alive in our story, or we can decide to rise up out of our story. Okay? And I'm saying that because if you make the decision that you're ready to let go of your story, because our story keeps us at the bottom of the ladder. And at the bottom, that's where all the dirt is and all the debris is. And we're just being buried alive in our story. We're not receiving any fresh air down there. We're not receiving any clear signals or frequency because we're down so low. But we have this ladder. Now that we do have. And so we can figure out what we're going to do with this ladder because we know that this ladder can be climbed. Okay, so if we're going to rise up out of our story, we have to make the decision to climb the ladder. Now, this is not going to be easy because of the weight that we have to rise up out of that have weighed us down for so long. But as we climb the ladder, we drop the weight or our story. It's still our story, but we're rising up out of it. We drop it a little bit at a time. So once I decide I want to raise up out of my story and even stand up, I can breathe a little better. I can pick up better signals and frequency because I'm not just laying in my story. Okay, so as we climb this ladder, it's going to be force against us because we're trying to climb a vertical ladder that we have to balance. So there's going to be force and pressure against us from the barometer. And that's okay because as we learn to weather the storm that comes along with balancing our feelings and emotions, then the ladder will become more balanced for us. Okay. But one thing we must remember, is that we cannot take, let me look at something. I want to make sure I didn't skip anything. One thing we must remember as we rise up out of our story is that we must not look down. Okay? Because there's nothing down there but our story. And we already know our story. So let's not take our eyes off of what we're going to accomplish, and that is to rise up out of our story. So let's not take our eyes off of ourselves. We have to remember that that's our story for this incarnation. And we know the story already. And we're going to rise up out of the story. So we must remember not to look down at the story. Because if we look down at the story, we're going to slide back down the ladder. And nothing is down there but our story and debris that we're rising up out of. And the most important thing now, for those of us who wants to rise up out of our story, that we have been living in all of these decades or years or whatever, if we want to rise up out of that story, then we have to remember that our inner being is the most important thing. That story that we're leaving, that story as we climb, that story is not us. We're dropping that story off. And we come to realize that we are not our story. So as we climb the ladder and come to understand that we are not our story, then we become light, L-I-T-E, because we're dropping off, we are slowly dropping off our story. So it's going to make us much lighter when it comes to climbing the ladder. And then we are dropping off our story. And then in the process, we become light, L-I-G-H-T, because we begin to see beyond our story. It changes our vision. So when the storms come in our life, which the barometer, as it changes, we balance ourselves in our emotions and feelings. And we can do that now because we are rising up out of our story. And that story is not weighing us down like it was before. I'm looking for something. I'm thinking that I missed. It's something I wanted to tell you that. Okay. So maybe I did. If I missed it next time, I'll let you know. So as we go back and forth, between polarity and duality, between positive and negative states of polarity and duality. They produce unequal physical effects at different points in our life. So when we're dealing with polarity, we know that polarity is basically one direction, and duality is like back and forth, back and forth. And that's what we've been so used to doing at the bottom of the ladder, going from one thing to another. Oh, I'm not loved, or I should have had better parents, or, only if I could get a better job, or if I could find someone to love me, our duality. We're going to be dealing with that as we go up the ladder, and don't beat yourself up if you slide down a little bit. Just remember that you're climbing, and continue to look up. Because we have to find balance. We're going to have to be able to balance this ladder. And that's something that we haven't done before, because we're rising out of our story. So this is a new challenge for us, but we can do it. And as we do that, we're strengthening our inner being. And also, it helps us to deal with the world that is surrounding us much better, because we're not living in our story anymore. I still feel like I've missed something. Let me look back, because it's something that see anything. I don't know why I felt like I missed something. So the last thing I said is that we need to find balance. And I want us to always remember a cycle of change, success, and growth is imminent. As long as we continue to examine our barometer, by our examine our feelings and emotions by our barometer, and that will let us know where we're at in our life at that time. Just remember, I wanted to say also, just remember, don't look down. Only our story is down there, and that is not us. And that's what we have to come to, what we're growing to understand, is that our story really is not us. We are spiritual beings, and our story is our experiences that we have experienced since we've been in here. And in order to uh, get above our story or to find our purpose for why we're in here, first we have to rise above our story. Now, back to the ladder. As we continue to rise above our story, the barometer is on one side and the scale is on the other. And as we continue to climb this ladder, then, oh, that's what it was. I don't know. I thought I wrote that in there, but it just come to me. As we continue to climb the ladder, let me see, because I sure did miss that. Yeah, and then that's what it was. As we continue to climb, as we climb the ladder, okay, the barometer. Let me see. How do I want to put that? Yes, the barometer represents change, but the scale side of it represents endurance. And as we build our endurance, it's just like a builder. As they build their endurance, they can lift more. As we build our endurance, we can climb the ladder much higher to get closer to zero. And each step that we take on the ladder represents our accomplishments from the endurance that we have built up. And that's why I was saying to you, to everyone, don't look down, because only your story is down there, and you are not your story. You're building endurance, and as you build endurance, you're accomplishing another step in your rising as you rise out of your story. And that is gonna be very important. It's not gonna be easy, but it can be done. And the reason why I say that is because we're spirit. Because we're a spiritual being who's having physical experiences. And a lot of time we take our physical experiences as being us, and we take them real personally. So that keeps us at the bottom of the ladder, to the point that a lot of times we're just afraid to even try, because we don't think that we can accomplish that, but we can, as long as we rise above the story. And as we build our endurance, we'll get closer and closer to zero. I'm not saying that this can be accomplished in a day, a week, a month, a year, not even one decade, because it takes work. We are so weak as spiritual beings right now. And that's because we have been at the bottom of the ladder so long. But as we continue to climb the ladder, then we get fresh air, and we start breathing fresh air, I want to say. And then our signals become clearer, because signals are much clearer the higher you are up. Because signals are all around us at all times. But as we progress on our ladder, and we all will progress at different pace. It's not like something that we're just going to go straight to. This takes time, but as we progress at our own pace, then we will get closer and closer to zero. And we all start at the same starting line, I guess you would say. We all start at the same place, and that's the bottom of our ladder. So as we continue to get to zero, and the more balanced that we become, we have to remember that the pendulum swings both ways. So if I balance myself and I hold that position, coming up the ladder, let's say that the ladder start from the bottom at 50, and we're going to go, as we climb up, we get closer to zero. So from the bottom, we're counting up. From the bottom, we're counting down. And from the bottom, we counting up. No, we're counting down. Well, let's say at the bottom of the ladder, I ain't going to get into all that. Let's say at the bottom of the ladder is 50. So as we go up the ladder, we're counting backwards, okay? And let's say the top of the ladder goes to 50. And both ones are at the zero mark. So the pendulum swings both ways. And as we climb, let's say that it took me about 5 months. And let's say that I done moved from 50, getting up from the bottom of the ladder, which start at 50. Let's say that I moved from 50, and this is just an example because we all go at our own pace. Let's say that I went from 50 to 45, okay? But I need to hold that position with my feelings and emotions because the pressure is still there. But I'm not getting caught up in my story anymore. So I'm a little bit more freer. And let's say that I have come to 45. So the pendulum swings both ways. If I'm at 45 on the negative end, then I'm at 45 on the positive end. So that gives me my balance for coming that far. And we will be able to stagger, we will be able to stagger the ladder. And it's gonna take time because we all are hurting inside from so many different experiences. And it's not easy. It becomes easier as we drop our story or as we don't continue to live in our story. So as we get closer, as we get further up the ladder, then the pendulum swings the other way. So what we have to do is that as we climbing the ladder, the things that we used to say to ourselves and how we feel about ourselves will have to change as we go up the ladder. We have to say kind and loving things to ourselves. Remember, I told you that you are the most important thing. Nothing else comes before you. And we have to put ourselves first, and that's something that we don't do. We'll put everyone else before ourselves, and we'll keep our commitments to everyone else. And then we feel bad because we're not getting the same in return. And we can't expect that because we have to give that to ourselves. I had to become the most important thing in my life. I had to be the most important being in my life. And once I become the most important being in my life, then I can place the importance of other people in my life. And that becomes very important when it comes to climbing this ladder, because we have to be present with ourselves at all times. And that's going to be very, very, very important as we leave our story that isn't really us. Because that's all we always knew. We always hid behind our story. So what we're doing now is that we're balancing our emotions with, how I want to put that, with loving ourselves first. I hope that, I'm going to be signing off now, but I hope that I have said something that will motivate you to want to put yourself first. Because you are important. You are as important as you feel about yourself. If you don't feel special to you, if you don't feel loving to you, then no one is letting you down. You are letting yourself down. Because it's our responsibility to love us. It's not our responsibility to, or should I say, we shouldn't look outside of ourselves for what we already have in ourselves. And that is love. All we have to do is turn inwardly and learn to love ourselves. And we can start that now. All we have to do is make the decision that it's all about me. And not feel that or be judgmental about it being about me. Because that's not being judgmental. Because it is all about you. If you don't make it all about you, then you can't help anyone else. Because it's not authentic. So I wish you well as you climb the ladder. And let me say this much, because there is some religious people here. And you remember when Jacob was on the ground, and I don't remember for sure about him saying that he had this dream. And he had woke up and he seen this ladder. And it was the ladder like I described to you. This ladder was going all the way up into heaven. And he said that he climbed the ladder. And he said, I was going up and down the ladder, up and down the ladder. I'm paraphrasing now because it's been a while since I read that scripture. And, you know, I want us to look at that like that, because once we leave our story down at the bottom of the ladder, we become lighter, L-I-T-E, and then we become light, because now we can see. So we can go up and down the ladder like Jacob was saying. Let's say that, like I was saying, the bottom of the ladder started at 50. Okay, and let's say that you learned over a decade, a few, because everybody grow differently, whatever amount of time that it took you. And let's say that now your your scale is like 25 negative. So you're 25 from zero and you're 25 from 50. Okay, so you can move up and down that 25 to 50 and back up, because we're going to be tossed to and fro in our life by our feelings and emotions in the barometer that is on each side of the ladder. But at least we can move back and forth in that area where before we was not able to do that. We were just on the ground. And Jacob gave an example. He said, he went up and down the ladder, up and down the ladder. And that's the way that our feelings and emotions is. In the barometer is the one that keeps us in check with our feelings and emotions, and let us know if we're dwelling too long in one of those feelings or emotions. Even if we're not able to overcome it as fast as we like to, at least it's light shining on it. At least we know that that's there, where before we didn't, because we were on the ground. And that's okay, because we may not accomplish everything in this incarnation this time, but the thing about it is being able to move between those emotions and not setting off signals for